Welcome to our live session. Today is what is it, the 9th? It's the 9th of July. And we are very honored here today to have the Garcia Brothers. Well, let me just introduce them a little bit first, and then we're going to bring them on. And they have some great experience from the standpoint of uh, taking some of their films to film festivals and winning more awards than I can count. And so we're hoping to kind of pick their brains a little bit and learn a little bit more about the process of filmmaking. And so let me just run through a couple of things. Number one, if you've not seen their films before, I did put a couple of links in the description so that you can go watch a couple of them. Also, that'll take you to their channel so you can look around and see all of their short films. In particular, today we're going to be talking a little bit more about the film Hero. And the Hero film has won a whole bunch of awards. And then also one that was shot actually within the last 4 weeks here called Last Embrace. So let me go ahead and bring on the Garcia brothers and we'll get started here. Drew and Ann and Drew and Nate, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank
Yeah.
you.
And then the other guy over there is Cary Judd. I don't know how many of you know him. Actually, probably a number of you that have seen the channel here before know him. He's my brother. So we have the brothers and the brothers. And Cary was getting a little mouthy tonight, so he is without a microphone for right now. If he's well behaved, we might bring him on later. So, first of all, Nate and Andrew, thanks so much for joining us again. And I want to kind of, if you could take us back to the start of your filmmaking career. What was it that kind of led you this direction, and how did you get to where you are today?
Well, yeah, I guess it's a bit of a long story, but we'll do the nutshell version. We've been making movies since we were kids. Basically, I was probably about 8 years old. Nate was around 4 years old when we first started, and we just were playing with the family VHS camcorder back in the early '90s. And basically, it was a way of like capturing our playing, and then it evolved into trying different special effects, and then into telling stories. And the bug got me probably when I was about 10 or 11 years old. I read a whole biography on Steven Spielberg. I saw that he started making movies when he was 8, and I was like, okay, so this is something that you can do even at a young age. And so yeah, like that became my personal career pursuit ever since probably 9 years old. And by default, Nate was always the one who was in front of the camera when
Yeah,
we were
yeah,
making movies.
yeah.
So
You're limited on actors, so I think I came to. Uh, all right, thank you. I came to like the directing or filmmaking half of it a little bit later, but I was involved the whole time. Andrew and I, that's all we did growing up was make movies together, and we made all the movies we loved. We tried to recreate them. We went through a Zorro phase, we went through an Indiana Jones phase, and Star Wars and all of that. And so, really, our collaboration has gone for that long, and it's just felt so natural to continue it as adults.
Cool. Hey, Cary, quick request here. It looks like in the comments we're getting a request for boosting the sound a little bit. If you can bump that up for us. All right, cool. So, okay, so you had the bug pretty young. That's younger than most people, in fact, and so that's pretty cool. How how did you make so you went through school, and then how did you actually start getting more serious about it? How did you kind of make that next step?
well, I guess jumping way ahead, what we did was follow the path a lot of people have to follow, which is doing corporate video, wedding videos, that kind of stuff to pay the bills. But I think the real turning point for us was we decided we wanted to tell stories, tell our own stories. And so, in order to kind of get to that point, what we did was um, we decided that we were going to make video contests, videos full time. And so, there's websites like onlinevideocontest.com that just list a plethora of contests. And so, every day, uh, we quit our jobs And
Yeah.
we would wake up, we'd read a brief, we'd write a script, we'd go out and shoot something, usually just with Nate, and edit it and submit it by the end of the day. And we try to do 5 a week. And so that was our income for about 8 or 9 months.
Yeah,
Wow.
that kind of rekindled everything because for a long time, Andrew's 4.5 years older than I am, and so he had gone through college and he had started doing nonprofit videos. And when I graduated from school, I didn't really know where I wanted to go or what I wanted to do. And he said, "Why don't you come back and just make videos with me for a summer?" So I came back to Boise and we started making, nonprofit videos. And those aren't super creative. Uh, so this phase of doing these commercial contests really rekindled, I think, something we had as kids where we'd wake up, we'd come up with a concept, and we could go make it together. And so it's really what started us back into narrative filmmaking.
Yeah, and then what we did with that was we made a reel out of the best spots that we made. I mean, and there's some good money in video contests, by the way. I think the highest prize we won was $10,000.
Yeah, if you want to build a reel to go direct commercials, you can go to, I think it's onlinevideocontest.com, and there's contests posted there all the time. And that's what we did. One of them was a commercial for Heinz ketchup, and we're like, man, what do we do with, because it was just
It was
the
a
two of us.
Vine video,
It was
6
a Vine,
seconds.
yeah, back when Vine was still a thing. And so we're like, Andrew goes, why don't we just do a big bottle of ketchup, and you're just excited about it. And so we did that, and they paid us $8,000, and it took
And we were invited to join the Screen Actors Guild.
yeah, it took 3 hours, and then a few months later we got another check because they had relicensed it. So
Yeah.
you never know. It's a strange path, but it did force us to be creative and solve problems because there was only one actor available. That was me, and we only had a certain amount of gear and lighting, and so we took that time to make as much money as we could, and then buy as much gear as we could so that we could actually go make more professional work.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Um, Cary, we're still getting requests for a little bit more gain. Do you have any more to give us?
Probably.
Okay. Sorry for that. All right. All right. So I no idea that that's how you got your start. So that's interesting because what strikes me is that if you are writing a script and shooting something and delivering something at the end of every single day, you're getting a lot of practice in the entire filmmaking process, like day after day after day after day. What did you find? Um, how long do you feel like it took before you started being able to make new pieces that were a lot more impactful? Even if they weren't super creative necessarily, but if just something that had more impact that touched the audience more effectively.
Yeah, we definitely got our reps in doing the contests, which then we did about a 2 year stint of actual work with ad agencies. But it really wasn't until we made our short film Hero that it really pushed us, I think, outside of our comfort zone and caused us to, I think, hit that next level as far as our storytelling goes. And we had to figure out how to co-direct too. It's like just because we're brothers and we're close, it doesn't mean we automatically just know how to like be super harmonious with our directing relationship. And so
Mm.
we had to kind of work through that and process through that. And Hero was really kind of the moment that happened.
Yeah, it's coming to that realization that compromising isn't a bad thing. If the other person is not coming with an idea out of ego, but they truly want the thing to work, and that's the most important thing with any collaboration is that it's not about ego. It's about making the best story possible.
Excellent. And so that does bring us to Hero. So Hero has actually a multi-part story, it seems like. So when did you first come up with Hero, and what was the genesis?
Well, we had done these commercial contests, and it was the same year we started doing that. So that was
2014.
2014. And there's this local film festival called I-48, which you have 48 hours to come up with a film, shoot, edit it, and deliver it. So we had, a decent amount of practice by this point of coming up with stuff quickly and then delivering. So we entered this contest, and they give you a film genre, and they give you a line of dialogue and a prop, and we got the adventure genre. And so it was Friday night, and we were really, racking our brains of how to do an adventure film in basically a day of shooting. And so I think Andrew's the one who kind of had this idea come into your head.
Yeah, I just had an image come into my head of a kid going up into an attic, and as he went into the attic, it became kind of like something straight out of Indiana Jones. And it seemed to me that that image really kind of captured what it's like to be a kid and to have limitless imagination, and kind of the way that I remembered playing. And so we kind of used that as the construct for telling the story.
So we made Hero. Basically, it was the same movie in 48 hours, and it won, I-48 that year. And we continued making commercials, and we got to the point where we thought, it's time to actually step out here and try something more creative and push toward narrative work. And Andrew again called and goes, what's the thing we enjoyed making most as far as the story? And I said, Hero. And he said, yeah, exactly. We should just remake it. And the original one was about a boy and a girl, and they fell in love basically. And we thought, let's make it about brothers, because that's something we can really feel personally. And so that's really how it was born, was out of just out of that year doing contest videos and being forced to create every day.
Excellent. Okay. Cary, more requests for loud. We're not loud enough yet. we got loud for just a couple seconds, and then it kind of fell back down. So sorry again for the tech issues here.
Yeah, how do we turn that down? Is it very loud in here?
Can I turn the headphones down?
Thanks everyone for your patience here. So, okay, so I'm guessing that the original Hero was very different from what we see today. I'm guessing it was so if it was like a 48-hour film, contest, that what we're seeing today is pretty rich, and it goes through a variety of different scenes, and it sounds like the story's changed a little bit too. It's kind of evolved some. So now, instead of the boy and the girl falling in love, now you have the older brother and the younger brother, where the younger brother is really kind of just wants to hang out with his older brother, just want to, be cool with the cool kids. How did that evolution take place, and what does that process look like? So if you're writing the script, if you decided, okay, we're going to go back and do Hero, how does that process work? Do you both sit down and kind of talk through it, or how does that work?
Yeah, I think the idea might have struck me about, in the original I-48 film, it was ambitious for 2 days, but we knew we could do a lot more with it if we had more time and some budget. And so I think really the kind of major difference between the two films thematically was that we wanted to give um, the real life story, the kid in the real life story, a really heroic moment. And so again, I think I had an image come to my head. That's how I usually brainstorm, is just letting images kind of enter into my head. And I had this memory of, I think it was my
Good.
cousin, who was he was playing with like the cord on the blinds, and he ended up like kind of like strangling himself. And I remember going over and grabbing his legs and lifting him up so that he didn't choke to death. And I think if I hadn't been there, it would have been a bad deal. And so I had that image in my head, and I was like, what if we did something like that? And so I think that was the original thought that I told Nate, was that if we told the story between two brothers, and then we gave the older brother a moment to kind of realize what it really means to be a hero. He's got this kind of macho idea in his head with the way he plays about what being a hero is, but then we put him in a real life situation where he has to be heroic, and what does that look like? And then it evolved from there into kind of a different moment. But yeah, that was kind of like maybe the first big idea, and then we just started throwing out fun ideas for scenes, because you can tackle so many different genres with this way of telling a story.
Yeah.
There was also just like the really practical end of things, which is if you try and make a really sincere, like big budget adventure film on $16,000, you're going to fail epically. So we needed to build like a mechanism where the audience wasn't like judging how corny the adventure genres were, because in your head you're saying, well, these are kids playing. And so it also came out of us trying to be practical and say, okay, what's the audience going to actually believe? Because if we go and try and make Indiana Jones, it's going to be horrible.
And so you threw out a number there, and that was 16,000. Is that a hypothetical, or is that actually what the budget was
That
for
was the
putting that
budget.
together? Okay.
Half of that went to getting a live score for it. And
Wow.
and the way that came about was pretty, I guess, serendipitous. We were wanting something that sounded big, that sounded like the great scores from the 80s and 90s, you know, E.T., Indiana Jones, Star Wars. And obviously those are incredibly expensive. That's why you don't hear them in indie films. But we were thinking stock music, but we knew that would be limiting, as far as like it's not custom. You can't put it to picture very well. So we started looking for composers, and we looked through SoundCloud, and I literally typed in composers and started scrolling. And so we're going through, and I was looking through all these composers, and I came across this guy named Robin Hoffman, and pressed play on his first track, and it was a real orchestra, and it was for, I think it was like a mobile game, and it was outstanding. And then I played another one, and it was in like an adventure genre film, and I sent it to Andrew, and I was like, this guy's phenomenal. We gotta, what do you think? And Andrew loved him, and we thought, there's no way. I mean, this guy is going to be way out of reach. There's no way this guy would score our stuff. Turns out he's a young guy in his early 30s, and he's in Germany, and he loved the idea of Hero. And we said, can you do like a digital score for, I think, what was the original number we said?
5,000.
5,000.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, I can, but I would love to do a live orchestra. If you can up that number a little bit, I can get a live orchestra. So we're like, man, heck yeah. So we scraped together the money, and that's how we ended up with a real score.
And we should say that, like, what was really cool about that was, like, Robin could have just used synthesizers and paid himself, for all the time it would take to write, 9 minutes of really complex music. But he saw the vision for the film, and he was willing to, work for next to nothing, which was so cool, and put the money into hiring the Prague Orchestra. And so I think the music really gives the movie its soul. You can really feel the authenticity of that score, and I think that's kind of what really made the difference. It kind of pushed it over the top. So that was a really important thing in making that film.
I agree, and that was, to me, it felt so epic that way because it just felt so polished. Where in the process did that happen? So Nate, you're looking out on SoundCloud. Was that after
That
principal
was before.
photography?
No, that was before.
Okay. Okay.
Part of it did, it was like, if we can't find a composer, we're going to have to find stock music, and we're going to have to work around it and maybe know the tracks going in so that we can shoot and it feels more like it's custom. But we were hoping, against all hope, that we could find somebody to actually score it. We had hired, and we should say we had hired a composer for another short film we had done a few years before this, and he was a great composer, but it's hard to find the collaboration that works.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was also that, is this going to work out? And the collaboration with Robin was so effortless, and he was so on the same page with the tone and the style of music we were after. It just went off without a hitch, and we were so lucky to find him.
Amazing. Okay. So if that was half the budget, where did the other half of the budget go?
Yeah, we had to be pretty thrifty. We called in a lot of favors. I mean, so first of all, we pretty much just crewed the thing ourselves.
Okay.
So we co-directed it. Nate pretty much was the costume designer, and
Amazon.
Yeah, Amazon. I DP'd it. We co-directed it, and produced it together. and we edited it together and colored it, all that kind of stuff. So that was a major way to save. And then we also like we would buy props and then we would sell them off on eBay as soon as we were finished with them. So like we bought this really cool um, airsoft rifle that actually ejected cartridges.
Mhm.
So that was really cool, but that thing cost $600. So that was like a big chunk of our, $7,500 that we had left.
Wow.
And so we filmed the adult scenes like 2 months probably before we filmed the kid half of it. So we had that gun for maybe like 2 weeks, and then we put it right back up on eBay and sold it for almost full price. And then that money was able to be reused into buying more props for the second round of filming with the kids. So there was stuff like that we did. We paid everybody that was on the crew something, but it was also a labor of love. Nobody was getting their full rates, but we made sure to pay them something. And so like yeah, it was really just kind of like scraping by to make it happen. But yeah, it was like we had to really kind of take on a ton of the responsibility between the two of us
Yeah.
to make it happen, because we didn't want to demand too much of anybody else, with our limited budget.
Yeah, it was a big
Yeah.
learning experience. It was fun.
And then camera. You just use your own camera?
Yes, at this point, so we had done all the commercial contests, and then we put together a reel, and we were able to start landing actual commercials. So we started buying better gear. We bought the Ursa Mini Pro, and that's what we started shooting commercials on. And so by the time we made Hero, we had enough gear to make something professional.
Okay. And then what about sound? Do you guys do your own, or did you have a crew member come in to do that for you? Production?
That's pretty much the only crew member that was consistently there, and that's Miles Davis. And we've worked with Miles for a long time, and he's fantastic at what he does, and such a hard worker, and has attention to detail. Doing your own sound and directing and shooting and producing and stuff, it maybe is a bit too much, because sound is such a technical job that it's hard to do it all. So we were grateful to have Miles there.
Very good. And then in post, you'd mentioned, Drew, that you guys did the coloring, the editing. Did you do the mix as well?
We did do the mix. Interestingly, there was a couple of sequences that we could have done ourselves as far as the sound design goes, but we farmed out on Fiverr. So the racing scene in the desert, the kind of Fast and the Furious throwback, and then also the Vietnam scene, the war scene. We found a guy on Fiverr who, I mean, he didn't have anything in his reel that was cinematic. It was just a bunch of kind of like abstract sound design. But we kind of we struck up this conversation, and he gave us a quote, and it was really it was within the budget, and he was thrilled to have kind of a new challenge. I think he's in Ireland.
Yeah.
And so he tackled those two scenes for us and saved us a lot of time. And so that was really cool. And then, yeah, we did the mix ourselves. Then we were working in Adobe Premiere Pro. We work now exclusively in DaVinci Resolve. But yeah, we mixed the whole thing just right in Premiere, because I'm not very good in Adobe Audition.
Yeah, and Andrew did all the visual effects, which there were a lot of visual effects in Hero. A lot of bullet hits and muzzle flashes, and just a lot of things, painting things out. And it was a ton of work for Andrew to do that. So, but between the two of us, we were able to do the lion's share of pre-production, production, and post-production.
You did all the Foley. You
I did all the Foley. I was out
and footsteps and breathing and clothes
I was
rustling.
crawling around my house with a mic, It was a good time.
Very good. So I'm curious. So we're gonna in just a minute. We'll probably start transitioning over. But before I forget, so what's your long game? Where do you want to go? What's your next level, and what's the next level beyond that?
Well, yeah, I guess kind of to bring it full circle with Hero, the reason we did make Hero is because we were setting our sights on making feature films. And so we wanted to make a short that was basically a calling card for our style, the kind of movies we want to make one day. And so it was a long, long road from the time we finished Hero, which was like September of 2017, to when we finally started to get some traction with it. So we sent it out to film festivals. I think we probably submitted to about 50 festivals, and those fees can add up.
Mhm.
So that kind of came out of the budget too, and we had to be real selective. So we did 2 rounds of submitting to festivals. The first one was just kind of like just whatever was kind of, the event date was the nearest, so that we could, get it on a big screen and watch it with an audience. And then we were a lot more selective for the second round of submissions, which we did about 3 or 4 months later. And we focused just on festivals that were in the LA area. And because we thought, okay, it's closer to the industry, and maybe it'll, come across the path of somebody that we could, connect with. And sure enough, that is what happened. We ended up getting into a cool program called NALIP, which is the National Association of Latino Independent Producers, and that's in Hollywood. And they picked up the film, and they're partnered with HBO, and they showed it at their event. And then from there, a producer saw it, and he programmed it at a smaller event in San Diego. And from there, we finally were taken out, and we were, shopped around to the different agencies, and we landed with APA, which is one of the, the big 7 agencies in Hollywood. And so that was about a year ago. So the process took about 2 years to finally land an agent. And now, ever since then, we've been working on developing our first feature film. And so we wrote a first draft of a feature last year. And now a friend of ours is working on the second draft, and he's very close to finishing. And so we actually have some producers that are interested in this film. And we've had some other cool opportunities as well. We probably can't give too many details about it, but there's a show on one of the major streaming platforms that has been greenlit, and we've been asked to direct an episode of that. So that'll be cool. So, it's a long process, but we ultimately do want to make feature films. But if we're able to, make a living by directing television for some period of time, that would be really cool. That'd be a cool way to make money. So, that's basically, that's the career path.
And going back to like making Hero, we knew going in that it's not exactly like a film festival film. It's a movie that's it's heartfelt, and it's mainstream. And film festivals are just filmed with all these artistic films, these beautiful films, and here we are making this basically a kids movie. And so we were going on faith that it would work out, because it's not something that a lot of people are making, but we're something we're truly passionate about. We love those kinds of movies, and we had to go with our gut and just believe that it would work in the end.
Yeah. And you pulled it off. The funny thing is, the other night I was putting down some notes for our conversation tonight, and my daughter came in, and I said, "Hey, you want to see something?" And she's like, "Okay, whatever." And I actually put on the next film we're going to talk about. It's called The Last Embrace, and we'll come to that in just a minute. But the funny thing is that she was watching it, and then she sees her uncle come in and sit down, and she starts laughing, and I go, "Whoa, pause." This is not that kind of movie.
No.
And we'll come back to that and talk about that. But then we showed her Hero, and what was so cool about it is that she's laughing through a bunch of the different scenes. Even before it finishes, she goes, "Wow, this is really good. I can't believe you're interviewing these guys." And then at the end, of course, she's crying. So you took her on that whole ride, which I think is really reminiscent of a lot of the movies I saw as a kid.
How old is she, by the way?
She's 19.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So so you definitely connected with that part of the audience the other
great.
day. But that's the thing that really kind of stuck out to me, is that it had that, that 80s, 90s kind of epic score to it. It had the feel, it has the funny parts, but then it also has this kind of, impactful theme that really becomes clear at the end, that really kind of touches people pretty quickly. So that's an interesting thing. So I guess one thing I heard you say, Drew, it sounds like, so really what you guys aim for is to be kind of a team director. That's really kind of your end game. Is that's what you really want to do?
Yeah, I think that there's so much upside to being a directing team. Like if you can figure out the alchemy of a directing duo, like I think it's just the coolest experience. Um, I Before Nate graduated and came and worked with me, and we figured out that we wanted to pursue this thing together. I had directed some stuff myself, and so I had experience doing that. And there's a lot of pressure, on you as the director. And what I love about working in tandem with Nate is that there's this constant safety net and sounding board in the other person, where you have an idea, you can check it, you can kind of filter it between the two of you right there on the spot, and refine the idea very quickly. And that's something that's hard to do in your own head. So yeah, it's really cool experience to direct together. And so we just kind of both, jumped on board with this idea, and it's been what we've been going hard after for several years now. And yeah, I don't anticipate many projects in the future that we don't work together on.
Yeah, it's knowing that you have that safety net. It's knowing that you can do more together than you can do by yourself. There's a broader skill set, and you can just lift more together than you could alone. And so it's allowed us to stay with it during some difficult times. And I think we make more interesting stuff together because you are forced to fight for your ideas, not fight for your ideas. I think that's the wrong way to put it, but the best idea wins because it's not just in your own head. It has to be something that makes sense to someone else, and you can vet ideas quickly because of that. And so it's been a wonderful experience. And we've talked about this recently. We feel like we're collaborating better than ever, and we're really excited to continue the process.
Very cool. I have to imagine, and as you said, fight is not the right word, but um, there has to be some tense moments, but there has to be also this like this really this sincere honesty. There has to be, between the two of you. Because so, I mean, do you ever find yourself in a situation where you're like, no, 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 I really think we need to do this, and you guys disagree? How do you manage those situations if they do arise?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that we have reached a place the last few years where we are truly able to check our ego at the door, and we don't really fight for ideas if it's not resonating with the other. So we throw out an idea. One of the things that we always do, we have a saying, which is we say, not this, but. So it's kind of like whatever the first gut instinct that we have for an idea is. A lot of times it's terrible, but it's maybe in the right direction. And the other can recognize that. And so we'll say, not this, but what if this happened? And then the other one can look at the idea, process it, chew on it a bit, and say, I see what you're saying, and I think what you're really going for is this. And then usually within just a couple of minutes, we've refined the idea to something that really kind of works for both of us. And so I think that's the gold standard, an idea that resonates with both of us. And so yeah, we really try not to let ego be a part of it at all. It's really about like, okay, I think we both have decent taste, and so if I like it and you like it, it's probably a good idea. And that's kind of what we're going for.
Okay. And then how much of so you talked about your feature, which is in its second draft right now, but when you're working on the shorts that you've worked on, say in the last year, for example, um, how much of that is kind of written in stone up front? And do you end up changing anything once you get to set and you realize, hey, this isn't working the way we kind of envisioned it? How does that all work for you guys?
What we learned on Hero is, because we had some rough production days. It was our first really ambitious project. Well, we had made a short film before that was pretty ambitious, but it was something that was truly near and dear to our heart. And man, we got to set some days and it was a disaster. And so what we realized was we want to be planned as tightly as possible. And so going into every short film now, uh, we plan everything shot for shot, setup for setup. And if we have to adapt, then we are adapting from a place of being prepared rather than making all of it up on the fly, which is really stressful when you get into a situation where people are waiting on you to make decisions. So we would rather default to being completely prepared than going to set and winging it.
Excellent. And another somebody actually just brought this question up here. Did you for Hero? Did you have was it all production sound in the final mix, or did you have some ADR as well, dialogue replacement?
It was mostly production sound, but we did we did do one day where we drove around to all the different kids' houses and we had them like grunting and like the scene where they're all playing army, yelling and screaming and that sort of stuff. Just some textures for the background. It was mostly production sound though.
Okay, so all the dialogue was production sound, and then you just
Yeah,
mainly
all the
really
dialogue
effects.
was.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
actually there was one pickup that we did in the scene where the boys go into the golf cart and they can't find the key.
Mhm.
We didn't have a line there where they couldn't find the key, and we felt like in the visual it wasn't quite clear enough what was going on, so we had them add the line, and so we kind of cut away from them as they said the line, and so we felt like that kind of helped that moment. But I think that was the only time there was actual dialogue put in.
Yep, I think so.
Yep. Wow, that's impressive because um, because ADR of course is time consuming and expensive and
Oh yeah.
so on and so forth. And if if you can get all the good production audio, that's a great thing. All right, I want to kind of switch gears a little bit to one of your more recent films. This is the film called Last Embrace, and this was the one I showed my daughter first. And in fact, once she got past the fact that her uncle was in the show, she watched it through to the end, and she was, of course, tears coming down her face at the end, and she said, "Who's cutting onions in here?" Because she wasn't expecting that, but that really touched her as well. In that piece, the star of the piece is Jane Merrow, who is a Golden Globe nominated actor, and she worked alongside Peter O'Toole, and she's done a lot of acting, so she knew
Yeah.
what she was doing. How was that experience for you guys as directors? Because I gather that, for example, on Hero, we're not talking. I think everyone did really well, but we're not talking about A-list actors here. So working with Jane, how was that experience different?
Yeah, it was a really awesome experience. We had asked Jane going back like just a couple months ago. We had asked Jane to be in another like comedy film that we had made. We had a very small bit part, but we had all been wanting to work together for a while, and so she was awesome. And she came in and she did one line, and she killed it. She was on set for maybe 30 minutes, 45 minutes, something like that. And but I think she really liked the vibe, and the feeling was mutual. And so I think maybe like 2 or 3 days later, she sent us over the script for Last Embrace,
Mhm.
and it was only a page and a half, and we shot back right away like, yeah, let's do this. And so it was a little micro budget thing, and she had a little bit of money that she was going to put up for it, and but that wasn't really. It wasn't about the money for any of us. It was just like let's just make something. And so from the time she sent the script to shooting it to delivering it was maybe 3 weeks or something like that. It was very quick, but she had already kind of had a vision for this because she had wanted to work with Cary. Like she was like, Cary's the one to play the character of Death, and she was talking about his striking eyes, and we're like, yeah, that's definitely. We'd wanted to work with Cary as well. We had actually reached out to Cary on at least 2 other projects, asking if we could, cast you as, and it never worked out. So it was kind of like the stars finally aligned. And anyway, to answer your question, when we finally did get on set, it was such a cool experience to have. They had ran the lines a couple of different times already, and so they had a really good kind of beat on like what they wanted to do. And for us, it was just really about kind of giving them a safe environment to work and making the thing look as pretty as we possibly could. We made it during the pandemic, so there was only 5 of us on set, wearing masks and all of that. Um, but yeah, just the absolute definition of professionalism, and every little adjustment or direction was just easily absorbed, and it was just a dream. So yeah, that was a really cool experience to work with Jane, and Cary killed it.
Yeah.
Cary did an awesome job. Yeah, we were so impressed.
Yeah,
He's
working
always
with yeah,
he's always been an actor, just FYI. He's always done that.
he was fantastic. And you hadn't really acted in
I had never delivered lines. On
never
screen,
delivered
or
lines,
just,
and he was
you know,
amazing.
so.
But the thing we try to do, and we've worked with really great actors, but working with Jane and working with Cary, it was great to be able to trust them to do what they do. And as directors, we want to be able to be left to direct. When we worked with Robin scoring Hero, we tried to give him space to do what he was better at doing than we are. And that's how we feel about actors as well. As we don't know how to act, and we trust that they do. And so that's how we want to work with actors, is to believe that they have it under control
They know how to do their jobs.
and they know how to do their jobs. And so that's how we approach directing, more than trying to be acting coaches, is just to, like Andrew said, be a safety net and be supportive.
And how does that play out with child actors? Because that to me, I mean, your first major piece, well, at least I'm assuming that Hero was kind of the first major thing that you did, but child actors, that is, I worked on a production a couple of years ago, child actor, and the thing never saw the light of day. It never made it through post because it just was a disaster. And the kid, and all the other things that we saw, I didn't do the casting, but I was there doing sound, but his reel looked great. Maybe it was the director, I don't know, but it is a challenge, right? I mean, tell us about that experience.
That was insane. 5 kids. Some of them had been in like school plays or like community theater. One had been in like one short film. So the 2 main kids had acted a little bit, but everyone else was very green. And one kid, we literally were going door to door at one point to try and find the right kid.
It was so creepy.
It was pretty creepy. But the acting community in Boise is very small, so we were forced to do that. But yeah, we did feel a little weird going and handing out flyers in a neighborhood for child actors. But we ended up getting it done. But the experience of doing it, it was a lot of corralling. At one point, they were running up on the train tracks. It was a disaster. That was a part of not having a big enough crew, was feeling like things got out of hand sometimes. So yeah, we feel your pain. It was rough.
Yeah, and as far as like getting the performances out of the kids, there was quite a bit of giving them line readings, and they're fine with that. They're not offended by us giving them line readings. And one of the things that one of the tactics that we would do to get the energy up is right before the take, we'd get all the kids, almost like a cheer in baseball or something, and we would all just yell at the top of our lungs and then call action right away. And the kids were all kind of like on an energy high for the take, and they were kind of really bringing it. They kind of would kind of let the walls down by doing that. And so yeah, we were just trying things. And I feel like we got some pretty good performances out of at least half the kids had never acted before at all. And I thought they did a really good job. So yeah, it was some trial and error. Like Nate said, it was half like directing and acting coaching, and half babysitting.
Herding cats.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So one other thing that comes to mind too. So in the Last Embrace, for example, Jane wrote that. How does the experience change when you're directing something that you yourselves haven't written?
You want to answer that one?
We certainly approach it even more open-minded than normal, and we're approaching it like someone else wrote it, and respecting that, and trying to serve the vision they had while also bringing something of ourselves to the project. And we wouldn't do a project that someone wrote unless it resonated with us. And so Last Embrace certainly spoke to us, and it was a nice collaboration because we didn't change the script, but Jane also gave us room to direct, and so things worked out very well. I can definitely see collaborating with other people would not go quite so smoothly, but the trust there all around was wonderful, and I think that's really what we put first, is making sure that the script resonates with us.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Anything to add, Drew?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Nate talked about the trust, and I think that that's key for that kind of a collaboration. You know, I guess a comparison would be the way that we worked with our composer Robin on Hero. It's kind of like you have to find collaborators that you're not going to have to micromanage, like that you can let them do their thing. And so that's what we were able to do with Robin, where we were able to say, hey, like just write the score that you want to write. We like your stuff, like do your thing. And we had very minimal notes on any of the stuff that he sent back. I mean, maybe like two notes for the whole score. And you know that's kind of, I think, how the process seemed to go with Last Embrace, where it was like Jane just seemed to have a lot of trust in us to direct it, and that gave us the freedom to I mean, she said at one point, like, if you want to make this a comedy, make it a comedy. I don't think she really wanted us to make it a comedy, but I understood the sentiment to be like, I trust you guys and your taste, and that kind of liberated us to tell the story in a way that really seemed to resonate with us.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm curious. So, if for example, on the TV show that you mentioned earlier that you could potentially be directing here soon, going into something like that, what are some of your fears? What are the things that you're not sure about, or you're maybe scared of, or that keeps you up at night?
I think both Drew and I have become pretty good at managing little productions and making sure that we're efficient and getting things done. Um, Going on to a set with union crew and union actors and a system that we have not worked in before uh, definitely gives you anxiety, because you don't want to make a fool of yourself, and you don't want to seem like you don't know what you're doing in front of people. Um, I don't think that the craft of making an episode of a show is daunting for most shows, but I think that working in a system like that, and not having collaborated with people like that before, um, that is definitely the biggest fear for both of us, I think.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, I mean that's living in a locale where there aren't a lot of union shows, so never been exposed to that experience. That's the same thing I have here in Utah. Is that all the jobs that I'm called in to do are you know small, non-union, pretty straightforward.
Right.
Well, um, there are a couple things here. I want to go back, or actually, let's talk a little bit about casting. That's, I think, something that first-time directors struggle with, and in fact, some of the groups out here that I've worked with, some of the directors that are kind of just cutting their teeth really struggle with that. What are some of your thoughts on how to approach casting? What have you learned there?
Well, I guess we've learned to work with the best people you can, and you can spot them by looking at other short films that people have done in the community, and take note of actors you'd like to work with. It's something we've definitely done, and then something we did in the last short film is we wrote parts specifically for two actors that we knew that they could do that. So I guess the actors inspired the characters in that way. So I guess just trying your best to work with what you're given. In a lot of smaller markets, it's not really an option to cast hundreds of people for a role. So yeah, to audition hundreds of people for a role. So just trying to be as flexible as possible, and set yourself up for success, and set the actors up for success as well, and not casting them in things that they couldn't do.
Yeah, yeah. Then kind of again switching gears a little bit more. So You talked early on about film festivals. I think different people have different perspectives on that. With your experience with film festivals, um, it seems like that's been a success for you. That's really kind of gotten you guys, the next steps that you were looking for. Is that a fair way to put it?
Yeah, ultimately it did. It didn't feel like it was leading anywhere for like about a year. Um, we had had some experiences where it seemed promising. You meet these people that give you happy talk. They a lot of people in the business are they're very salesy, and so like they talk everything up real big, and us being green and inexperienced at that point, we were just excited by anything that was shiny. And so, yeah, like there's a couple different people that we met that were like, "Oh man, I'm going to introduce you to this guy, and he's gonna, he's got this project going on, whatever." And so we get all excited, and one of the things you have to be careful of is people will just, they'll work you to death. They'll ask you to go and write a pitch for this, or come up with whatever. Like, it's all good experience, but that was all part of the journey for us, was realizing like, okay, this isn't going to be an overnight thing. And a lot of times it's the most unassuming people that you run across that end up being the catalyst for the opportunities. And so, yeah, like it was fun to go to the film festivals and watch the movie with an audience. And there's a real learning experience with that too, like seeing how the audience responds to certain moments you thought were going to land a certain way, and maybe they don't. People were laughing at a couple of moments that I was surprised about, but like there's that. And then also, but like, yeah, so I guess to answer your question, it did ultimately lead to the opportunity for us to break into the industry, but it was a very long road. And so, it's like, it's hard to like give people advice on how to aim. Like if you're trying to go after the same goal that we were, your path's going to be different than ours was.
Mhm.
You're going to run into different people than we did, and the opportunities are going to be different. And so, but film festivals are where the filmmakers gather. It's where the networking happens. But for us, it wasn't really about like, we weren't necessarily trying to build an indie filmmaking career. So, you know, just connecting with other DPs or other directors at our same level wasn't necessarily like what we were going after. We were aiming for Hollywood. And so that's why we moved our sights onto LA and LA festivals, because we were hoping to connect with people that were connected down there. And that did work for us. So there was kind of a little bit of strategy with like how we were targeting the festivals. Um, but then you also get these crazy out of left field opportunities that happen sometimes. Like we made another film just last year called Recommended for You, and it got put online and got picked up by Gizmodo. And then like the next day we were on the phone with Dark Castle Entertainment, and they were like talking about some movie that they had that in production that didn't have a director, and that fell through. We ended up going, but we went and we had a meeting in LA with Dark Castle, which Joel Silver ran it. I don't know if he still does. So that was like cool, but that happened like overnight after we put that short film out. So you never know where the opportunities are going to come from.
Wow. Okay. Go ahead, Nate.
Yeah, one thing we emphasized is to not be cagey about budgets either, because a lot of times you go to film festivals and the audience will ask, what was the budget for this? And the filmmakers will be like, well, we don't like to talk about that. What we realized was that producers, they want to know that information, because if you made, Hero, for instance, cost us $16,000, we self-financed. That kind of information is, mind-blowing to a Hollywood producer, and it actually impresses them. So, making something ambitious, and you made it for $2,000, that's nothing to be ashamed of. That's something to, be really proud of, that you made something great for not very much money, because it lets people know that you're
not being propped up.
That you're not being propped up.
Yeah.
That you're capable.
Yeah. Yeah. And along those same lines, while we're talking about budget, we've had a couple questions here in the comments too about location scouting. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Maybe in the context of Hero?
Yeah, in the context of Hero, that's actually a really interesting question. So we kind of maybe we reverse engineered it a little bit. Like we shot it where we live, and so we were already familiar with a lot of these locations. So like we shot the western scene at this ghost town up in the Owyhee Mountains called Silver City. We were already aware of that. You know, we'd done day trips up there. We shot the opening scene in the back alley, you know, a block away from our production office. So it was kind of like, you know, working within the constraints, creativity within constraint, it can be helpful. And so we were just basically working from locations we already knew would work. And so we were writing the different genres based on what we knew we had available for us. You know, if we had just sat back and just dreamed up whatever, you know, the coolest set pieces we possibly could, then we might have been pulling our hair out trying to find the perfect locations. And so for us, it was a process of, you know, working within the confines of what we had at our disposal.
Okay, and then what about the more recent films like Last Embrace, for example? How did the location scouting for that work?
Well, that was even easier. That's right in our neighborhood.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I walked to location. It was great. That worked out not just from convenience, but it was a really great location because we knew it was quiet. It looked like a park, but only people in the neighborhood can use it. It's pretty a well-developed park. It's been there for a long time, so we knew that we could kind of control it. People wouldn't be walking through shots all the time, and so that was nice. That worked out really well, and we didn't have to travel far to do it.
Yep. What about recommended for you? That's another one of your pieces. That one has a much wider selection of different locations. How about that one?
As far, yeah, for the locations, yeah, that was also my house was the main location for
Okay.
that. So I mean, that's, you know, that's easy. And yeah, there was a coffee shop in there, and Nate lined that up for us. There was, you know, we shot downtown Nampa again, right outside of the production offices there, which we're not at anymore. But yeah, so it probably feels like it's a little more sprawling than it really is. But yeah, it really is. I think working at this level, you know, it's very easy to get so caught up in the details. You know, one of the things that we try to put into practice is that we try to find locations that are turnkey, so to speak. Like we don't have to go in and do set decorating, you know, like we just find a spot that's going to work for us.
Mhm.
And so, you know, we shot in that coffee shop. I don't think we moved a thing, you know. Um, you know, when I bought my house, I was location scouting also when I was shopping houses, and I was like, oh, this house will work well for short films and commercials. So, yeah, yeah, location scouting. It's an interesting thing. We've had to do a lot of it between the short films and the commercials that we've done, but you know, a lot of the time it really comes down to the way you shoot it and the way you light it as well. You know, you could make a, you know, a fairly bland space look pretty good with some good light.
Mhm. And that while we're on that topic, let's talk about gear for a little bit. What's your philosophy on gear at this point in your careers? Because here's the thing I know that a lot of us struggle with is we're always watching for the newest camera. And today, what came out? Canon R5 and R6, right? And everyone, you know, Twitter's just going nuts. What's your philosophy on gear and cameras and all that stuff?
We've always thought that we want to max out what we have until we feel limited by it. So if we are making a short film, like we bought stuff for Hero, but most of what we made Hero with was gear we already owned, and so we didn't have to buy very much to get it done. We really, you know, gear is a tool, and it's amazing what you can do nowadays with the cameras and all the lights, but upgrading every year to a new camera, you know, is not necessary. The biggest thing is to focus on the craft and the storytelling, and to
Mhm.
keep pushing yourself and to keep pushing your gear until you feel like, you know what, we need to upgrade to an Ursa or a Red or whatever you feel you need, but not before you've maxed it out.
Okay. I think that's good advice here because it's easy to get caught up in that. Um, where are we going to see you guys next? I guess you can't necessarily tell us all the details, but we're going to see a TV show next. We're going to see that feature. Where are we next?
Man, I hope that it's the feature. I hope the feature film, because I think probably that if we get that TV gig, you know, that's probably fall of 2021. So I mean, the film would probably be a similar time frame if all goes according to plan. But we do have some financiers that are interested in the film. There's some producers interested, and there's even a couple of actors that we're wanting to approach as well. And so what we would like to do, actually this is probably where they would see us, is we want to make a proof of concept for this feature film and probably put that online. And so that would probably happen the fall of this year. So that's
Okay.
the next big thing that we want to do. Is we've found that the short films that we make are really helpful in the room, right, in Hollywood. So we've sat in, you know, Sony studios, and they've watched 2 or 3 of our shorts with us in the room, and they're just spitballing with us going, oh man, you know, we made a silly comedy short film called 300 2 or 3 years ago in an I-48, and Nate plays a bowler that sets out to bowl a 300, and it's really silly comedy, but we've sat in the room and watched it with different execs, and on multiple occasions we've had them say, you know, you guys need to turn this into a feature. And we're like, well, how? it's you know, but
Yeah.
that actually is what kind of halfway inspired the current film that we're developing. It's very loosely based on kind of the idea of that bowling film, which was basically a guy going after a really lofty sports goal, you know. And so anyway, yeah, we are hoping to turn this thing into a proof of concept, because that really is a good way to pitch, because you can, hopefully, if you know what you're doing, you can capture the tone, you can capture somewhat the look and feel, and you can say this is what you get. So it's one thing to hand them a script and kind of like try to give them your spiel. It's another thing to be able to actually play something for them that makes them feel something. And so yeah, the proof of concept has worked well for us. And so yeah, that's probably the next thing we're going to try to make.
Excellent. Well, I hope we get to see that come this fall or this winter. Our time is up. I wanted to just say thanks so much, Drew and Nate, for coming on. Cary, thanks so much for arranging this for us. And hopefully we can do this again sometime before too long.
Thank you.
Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
You bet. All right. Take care, everybody. Thanks for joining. We'll talk to you again soon.